All right, here we go. Let's get started with the Beat the Market 2025 home buyer webinar. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We've got a lot of you joining us from different avenues through our Facebook Live as well as webinar attendees, and there's a lot of people that want to watch this after the fact. So we're going to try to keep this to the point, make it as effective as possible in the limited time necessary so that we don't have you watching on here all night. And I'm excited to present some great information on how you can beat the market in 2025, even though the rates are not great and the prices are probably not what you hope they'd be. There's still some hope left. And I want to go over that with you. I want to thank Kevin Kuchler for joining me tonight. He's going to chime in on some of the mortgage stuff that goes into buying a home and kind of some tips and give us some information on different programs that are available out there. But just wanted to welcome you, Kevin. And I'm going to just kind of give a little bit of information about who I am. And then, Kevin, you can do the same. I've been a broker, owner, and agent for over 18 years. I also bring to the table over 15 years of construction management experience. I've run a team, I've run a brokerage, I've helped over 500 people buy and sell homes. So I've, spent a large amount of my career just figuring out how to be better and better at the game of buying and selling homes. So hopefully some of the information I share with you is going to be great information. And Kevin, why don't you just explain a little bit about who you are and what you bring to the table?
Sure. Thanks, Tracy. I've been doing this for 22 years, all in the Boston area. I've originated about $850 million in mortgages during that time. I own a house in Needham and also on Cape Cod, so I'm familiar with both the Boston area and with second homes on the Cape.
Awesome. All right, let's jump right into it. So, this webinar is going to be for anyone who's tired of dealing with their landlord, tired of annoying loud neighbors, tired of yearly rent increases, tired of having to live in a place that you just don't love, tired of your money going to build someone else's equity, and you just want to build a better future for your family. I know a lot of people that will be watching this have wanted to buy a home for a while. They're just the stars aren't aligning because this market is rather challenging. And I just wanted to start with this because the reason you want to buy a home is still alive and well. And we want to give you the tools to compete and win in today's market and even find a deal. So we're going to go over that in this seminar. But if you fall into one of these categories, you're really going to love the information we share tonight. So first of all, though, I wanted to share that as an industry and of real estate professionals, we really failed the consumer world because the consumer world thinks of us as all being equal. Anyone who has a real estate license is just as equal as someone else that has a real estate license. And we've led people to believe that all agents were professional, and that's not simply the case. Unfortunately, I wish it was, but it's not the case. Um, Also, that all agents don't want to talk to you until you're pre-approved. That is just not true. It's even true on the lending side. Lenders and agents want to speak to consumers and want to speak to you about your buying journey very early in the process, before pre-approval, before you're ready to go out and see homes, because there's a lot of things that go into being able to be ready to go out there and shop for homes. We've also led you to believe that um, you only need an agent when you're ready to view for homes. That's just not the case. You want to be having conversations with an agent and a lender far before you're actually ready to see homes. If that window's short, great, but if you have the opportunity to spend the time now early on, even if you're a ways away, even if you're a year or two away, we want you to have a conversation, an ongoing conversation with both your lender and your agent, and we want you to build a team that's going to work for you. Um, we've also led you to believe that agents don't want to show you homes until you're pre-approved. That's simply not true either. A lot of times it takes getting out there and looking at a few homes to get a sense for what you want in a home, what price range they are, and if that monthly mortgage payment is going to fit into your life. And a lot of times you just can't do that until you've seen a few homes. So, and to be honest with you, that's largely a lot of the time that you get to spend getting to know your team and seeing if you have the right team in place as well. And we've led you to believe that we only care about closings. That's simply not true. When you have the right team in place, we're going to be with you both before you're ready to buy, when you're ready to buy, after, when you close, and after you close. Because really, the right team should always be by your side to help you make good decisions. One of the things Kevin shared with me recently was, all the buyers last year that he had that closed in the first 3 quarters of the year that didn't love their rates had an opportunity in early fall to refinance and did refinance. And that only happens when a great team is in place to say, hey, you may not be happy with the rate that you go in at, but as soon as the opportunity exists to get into a better rate, we're going to help you out. So I just wanted to start with that not all teams are created equal, and you really need to find the right team to work with you through the transaction, both early on before you even get out there looking at homes, during the pre-approval process, during the home shopping process, all the way through until you're settling into your home and beyond. Because a good real estate team will always have resources for you. Let's say in a year you need to get a repair done in your house. Reach out to your team. Your real estate team should always be there for you, both now and in the future. Kevin, you have anything to share that?
No, I think that was a good opening.
Okay.
But I would like to emphasize it's important to talk to us early because there are things that we know that you might not know. And the sooner you know them, the faster you can get approved and get buying something that you want.
Exactly. So I know a lot of emphasis right now is on the rates, the rates, the rates, the rates. We don't love them. We want to see better rates. We both know, as well as most agents know in the business, when the rates come back down, the market's going to be flooded with buyers. But I don't want everyone to be hanging. Like if there was any advice I would give anyone thinking about buying or selling a home, it is, especially on the buying side, is it's always a good thing to own real estate. Now, the only caveat to that is if someone's buying their first home, I always want them to have a backup strategy. And it's one of the things I didn't actually plan on talking about, but then now that we're talking about this and we're talking about the benefits of home ownership, it's never a bad, you're never going to be in a bad situation owning a home as long as you can keep it long term. If your life changes and you need to move for a job, family reasons, etc., as long as you can rent that home out and keep that, you will never go wrong owning real estate. And I will put my entire life and career on that statement. There's never been anyone that's gone bad owning real estate long term. Now, if you get into situations where you're forced to sell quickly in a bad market and you bought in a high market, it can happen where you end up underwater. We had 2008 to 10, we had a market crash. A lot of people had to sell because they were forced to for many different situations. They couldn't rent, they couldn't sell. They got into a very bad situation. But I've seen people that bought in 2003, 4 that have just stuck it through. The other side came out in 2015 through 16. They might have sold then and made a good margin on their house, cashed in some amazing equity, or even better, if they've kept it till now, they're on the positive side by a large margin. So as long as you can own real estate long term, the benefits are real. Like this is just one scenario I ran, just so that anyone watching can get a understanding of what happens when you own real estate long term. If you can own a property that you bought for $300,000 with a mortgage with 3% down, let's say it was a conventional mortgage, you bought it with 3% down. Now, if we look at even just an average amount, and this is much lower than our appreciation over the last 10 years, but I'm just using a very cost of living based, some years zero, some years 3%, an occasional 5% year here and there, not a ton of appreciation. Based over a 10-year period, your mortgage balance would drop to 247,000, and with the appreciation, it would jump to $383,000 in value and give you an equity of $135,000. That is something you cannot get when you're renting. So unless you're constantly moving every year to 2 years, it really makes sense to own a property. No matter how hard it may feel, it always makes sense. The other thing that this isn't taking into the equation is your tax benefits. Now, tax benefits are very complicated depending on your tax level. However, the scenario that I give buyers when they're thinking about buying a home is if your mortgage is $3,000 a month, the first year you're going to be paying almost $3,000 a month in interest. That's $36,000, call it $35,000 a year in your first year in interest that you can write off on your taxes. So that $35,000, if you were at a 25% tax bracket, that's going to save you about $8,000 a year. That's $8,000. So your $3,500 a month payment is really a net of $2,700. And that's just one scenario, but it's a scenario that's important. The tax advantages and the long-term equity opportunity with owning a home will never be matched by renting. Kevin, you have any more thoughts on that?
Just a quick story. I had a client in 2008 while the market was crashing under agreement to buy his first condo in Cambridge. And he called me, he was going to back out. And I told him, I said, look, you need a place to live. The market's already crashed. And I explained to him a lot of the concepts that you just went through. Fast forward 4 years later, his condo was worth $300,000 more than what he paid, and rates had dropped. So he refinanced. I think he took $30,000 out, paid off his wedding, and he lowered his monthly payments because the rate dropped so much. So
Wow,
that's an extreme case, but it's a good example of what can happen.
totally. Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so let's move on. So this is what we're going to go over in the webinar. This is how you beat the market in 2025. These are the topics that we're going to cover. The first one is how to find a great deal on a home with instant equity, how to get into a home with a 5% interest rate. We're going to talk about that. How to get access to down payment assistance programs and housing grants. How to house hack and own a home with a net zero cost to you monthly. How to get your offer accepted once you find the perfect home, how to look for a cash buyer, how to look like a cash buyer when you're presenting offers, how to avoid buying a money pit, and the five biggest buyer traps. So let's get going with it. So how do you find a great deal with instant equity? And yes, I'm telling you, you can find deals with instant equity. I had a buyer close in December. They got the property for 465. It appraised at 540, almost 80,000, 80, $90,000 in equity. Plus they put in a new septic system for the buyer. So now he's got a $30,000 septic system plus that equity. And I'll tell you how we ended up doing this. That buyer looked for almost a year and we were looking for the right property in the right situation. And so you have to watch the market closely. So one of the reasons any of the buyers watching might have actually connected with us and gotten an invite to this webinar is one of the ways that we operate and a good real estate agent will operate is to both look for properties in any and every way possible. MLS does not equal everything that's in the market that's for sale. I forget what the stat was, but there's a stat that somewhere between 20 and 30% of all homes sold in the US on a yearly basis are not sold through MLS. That's a large amount of properties. It's there's no requirement that a seller sells through MLS. In fact, many sellers would prefer to avoid MLS if they could get the offer that they're looking for without tramps and having hundreds of people tramps through their house, without the neighbors knowing and maybe their employer, maybe their family. There's always reasons why people want to sell off MLS, including on MLS. So it's important to have your eyes and ears in tune to what might be out there that's not on the MLS. We do this through relationships, lots of relationships with other agents. We do this through Facebook groups, for investment groups, agent groups, coming soon groups, off MLS groups. There's all kinds of these groups out there. And there's for the consumers watching, there's a lot of groups like this that they can go look in as well. These are groups that are open to anybody that might want to invest in property, that might be looking for a home in a certain town. The town groups are a great source for off MLS opportunities. A lot of times people will post in the town groups, the little chat groups that every town has at this point in time. They'll chat in there, hey, thinking about selling my house. Be in those groups, be in the know, and constantly be looking for opportunities. Sometimes we find opportunities just driving down the street, and you may as well if you're looking for homes. So keep your eyes open to anything and everything that might be out there that might be available for sale, even if it's not on MLS. Watch the days on market. The days on market matter. If the days on market start adding up, you can find opportunities that maybe nobody else is seeing, whether it's because it was overpriced in the beginning, or the house needs a little bit of work, or it wasn't marketed properly. There's lots of reasons that days on market could be adding up, but oftentimes those can spell opportunities, especially if the seller is motivated. Now, sometimes you can't uncover motivation in an MLS description, but sometimes you can. Sometimes the agents will put it in there saying seller is motivated. So watch for those clues of somebody that might be motivated to sell and sell at a great price that you can get into that home and have some instant equity. Look closely at the details. Again, it might be wording, it might be things that are maybe missing from the listing. Honestly, a lot of times when I'm looking for my buyers, I look for the MLS listings with the worst pictures. I had another buyer that closed last year on a home that when the second we stepped in the door, it looked immediately way better than all the pictures that were in MLS. So the agent probably just took photos with their phone. It wasn't that the house was dark and gloomy. It was the way the pictures were taken or the day. I don't know the reason why, but we were in shock of how good the property looked. And it had been sitting on the market for a little while because it had terrible pictures, terrible marketing, but the house was way better than it actually showed. So look for those key words, look for the details, look for hidden value. An ugly kitchen doesn't mean it's not a great house. Somebody might have had the home since the 60s and just not updated the kitchen. Now, whether you have the money or not, Kevin, in a second here, ask you to share some details. You can do things like even if you're doing an FHA loan with 3.5% down, they have FHA renovation loans. So if the kitchen is just not something you can live with, but you want to do some renovations to the home, there are some opportunities for renovation loans out there. Or, the right team, the right agent can help you figure out the cost to renovate that kitchen on a budget instead of, because with any kitchen, you could take a 60s kitchen and say, I want to renovate this kitchen, and you could do some work yourself, hire some and do it for 15 grand, or you could spend 100 grand. There's a wide range of costs when it comes to renovating bathrooms and kitchens and other things in a house. Other things I look for how can we open the house up and make it more open? How can we make it more modern with some simple, low cost renovations that might make the house that you're kind of overlooking be the house you always wanted? So those are the things I look for. I also look to beat the price change. So typically, a real estate agent is going to start talking to the seller about a price reduction around the 30-day mark. We've been on the market 30 days. It's not selling. Let's talk about price reduction. Even if they are not lowering the price, does not mean that agent's not having that conversation with that seller. So I will look to come in either day 20, day 25, or if they've done a price reduction, give it another 15 to 20 days and try to come in with offers and beat the price reduction. I've had agents tell me before, like, wow, your offer's coming in and we were just about to lower the price. So watch those things. Everything matters when it comes to buying and selling homes. And there's a lot of clues out there that you can read into. Kevin, can you share a little bit about FHA loans that are available for renovations?
So renovation loans are loans used to get money in your hands, and it's usually geared to people who have low down payments, so you don't have the extra cash to renovate, say, a kitchen. So a renovation loan allows you to borrow money based on the future value of the property based on the specs of your planned renovation. So for example, if you are buying a house for 400,000 and you're putting 3.5% down, there's not a lot of extra equity there to tap or to borrow to fix the kitchen. With a renovation loan, you show your specs to an appraiser, and the appraiser might come back and say, you know what? if you spend $30,000 on a kitchen, then this house will be worth 450. So that's a big difference. And you're allowed to then borrow against the 450. And then
Hmm.
it's like a regular loan. The extra steps involved are you need to hire a contractor and you need to put together plans and specs for the appraiser and also fill out a cost worksheet.
Awesome. Awesome. So here's another thought on that too, is one of the buyers that we actually worked with, Kevin and I worked with, um, originally he was talking about different loans and what to do when he went to go buy a property, how much did he want to put down? And a conversation I had with him was, you can use an FHA loan, and if you, let's say, that down payment was going to be $12,000. But if you have 20, let's say 25 to $30,000, you could use towards a down payment. If you've got some handiness to you, or you have family members that are handy, is maybe instead of putting all that money down a table, you reserve some of your cash to renovate the home after you close on it. So in this scenario, that buyer walked into over $50,000 in equity. And so 540 was the appraisal, and he's going to do a bunch of work to it between him and his family members. So if they put another 20,000 into it and his cost equals 40 to 50 in real cost, his valuation might be up around 600,000. And when he goes to refinance in, let's say, a year, when the rates are hopefully going to be better, he could very likely have 20% equity in that property at this point and eliminate the mortgage insurance, which is a big opportunity to basically buy now, build equity, refinance, and if you have enough equity, wipe out your mortgage insurance. You, Kevin, am I just make sure I'm correct? You have to have at least
You got
20.
it. You can lower your rate and get rid of it. It's a double benefit. So people who can lower their rate and get rid of the mortgage insurance can see huge savings, hundreds of dollars per month on a
Yeah,
on a four or
huge.
$500,000 mortgage. The other benefit that you missed there is when
What?
you self-fund, you lower the down payment and use your own funds for the renovation. Then you don't have to show the bank specs and all of your plans. They don't care
Sure.
anymore. The house is yours. You do everything on your own. You have the freedom to,
Sure.
to do what you want.
Yeah, and not that those loans aren't a great resource. They really are. I've had buyers that use the renovation loans. They can be a pain.
Yeah.
There's a process to it. There's a process to having money um, drawn from that account when the work gets accomplished. So they're not the funnest process in the world, but they are worth it for the right property, the right opportunity. Because if you're really looking to get a leg up, one of the ways you can get a leg up is instant and buildable equity in a property. So those two things are important, I think, in a market like this. And if you don't have a lot of cash, the renovation loan's great. If you do have some cash, maybe self-funding is the way to go. And we'll talk about those strategies, or any of our team members that are working with you on your process of buying can talk to you about those strategies. All right, let's talk about how I put this out there and people ask me all the time, how is it possible that you can get me into a starting rate of a 5% interest rate? It's a buy down program. And Kevin, I want you to take a minute and explain how the buy down works to get someone in at a starting rate of 5%. Or even
Sure.
you could even do a 3-2-1 buy down, which would get you into what, a 4.5% interest rate right now?
Yeah, right. Or even lower.
Even lower,
So yeah,
honestly. Yeah.
let me start with a definition of this is a short term or what's called a temporary buy down. It's a program that we offer where in exchange for paying a couple of points, 2% of the loan amount, let's say, you can have lower interest payments for between 1 and 3 years. So I'll show you this by example. The most popular temporary buy down program is what's called a 2-1.
Mhm.
And that means in the first year of your mortgage, so let's say the rate on your mortgage is 6.5%. In the first year, we're going to lower that rate by 2 points. So instead of 6.5%, the first year goes all the way down to 4.5%. And then in the second year of your mortgage, the benefit shrinks. You go 1% below the start rate, which is 6.5%. So you go down to 5.5 for a year. And then in year three, you're back to the regular start rate of the mortgage, 6.5%. And the way temporary buy downs are structured is that your seller pays for them. They give you a credit, so it has to be worked into the deal. With you, Tracy, you've got to kind of factor that into the offer price and the specifications of the deal. And secondly, and this is kind of an important point, if you have to sell your house in less than 2 years for the 2-1 buy down, or if you refinance in less than 2 years, if you haven't used all of the buy down benefit, you get a refund of it when you pay off the loan in less than 2 years. So you're guaranteed to get the benefit. I also did some quick calculations, and this is based on today's rates. So let's say you're getting, I'm going to go to a $350,000 mortgage, Tracy. That's okay.
Yeah,
Starting at 6.5% for a 30-year fixed. Um, the principal and interest payment on that is about 2,200. With a temporary 2-1 buy down in year one, you go down to 4.5%, and the principal and interest drops to 1773. So you're
wow,
saving about $450 a month. In
wow.
the second year, the benefit gets cut in half, but you're still at 1987. So you're saving a couple hundred, a little over 200 a month.
That's
And
amazing.
and I think this is great for clients who are really pushing the envelope to get into a house, and they can see 2 and 3 years out that their income is going to go up. Maybe they have raises, bonuses coming in. Maybe they have a spouse right now on maternity or paternity leave, and they're on reduced income, but that income's going to rise in 8 or 12 months. It's a great situation for a temporary buy down.
I love it. Love it. The other reason it may be a benefit as well, especially in the first year, is everyone's very things come up. When you move and you move into a new house, you're going to have things come up. You're going to want that new TV for that wall. You're going to want that new couch. So that monthly, lowering that monthly payment gives you a little bit more cushion there, but also the tax benefits. People, I've had buyers say to me, well, it's great that it's going to save me almost $800 a month, or let's say $8,000 in my taxes at the end of the year, but I'm not going to see that benefit until next April. I'm gonna have to pay the monthly payment up front, but then I'll get that $8,000 probably in a refund next April. And so that rate buy down gives you that time to get the upfront lower mortgage payment. Next year you get the tax benefits, and now you have a little bit of extra money in your pockets to pay that next year. And you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe that we're going to see some interest rates at some point in the future. And that, you can then hopefully refinance in a year or two and get into a better rate, or again, have that other strategy of building some equity into your home so that you can refinance and get rid of your mortgage insurance and get the payment down, even if the rates haven't come down a ton. So there's many different things that play there, but I love it. And basically, it's very simple on how we put that into an offer. Seller to contribute X amount of dollars towards buyer's closing costs, prepaids, and escrows. The seller does not need to know that we're using it for a rate buy down. It's none of their business. Um, and that's how we do it. And that money sits in escrow, as Kevin mentioned. If you refi or you sell whatever, the extra money that's left in that account still goes back to you. So I love that program. Not enough buyers use it, but I think it's a great opportunity. All right, let's move on. How to get access to down payment and how assistance and housing grants. As soon as I wanted to put the slide in, Kevin's like, do we have to put this in? And it's not because Kevin or I discourage anybody from hopefully getting grant money and down payment assistance, but Kevin has the same feelings I do on it, which is they're not easy. They're not easy to get. They dry up quickly. A lot of times they can be, people get excited about it, they go and even have their dreams completely dashed when they go start searching for homes because they think they're going to get it. And then they make an offer and there's nothing available because Kevin, give us a little, you know way more than I do about this. Give us a little bit of information on like where some of those grant monies and those down payment assistance come from and why you can't really count on it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to focus on the grant money. The down
Sure.
payment assistance is much more dependable through mass housing, and I can talk about that a little later. But for the grant money, there was one a couple of years ago that was funded actually by COVID money from the federal government, and the state of Massachusetts decided, well, we're going to have a special grant program to to actually give money, up to $75,000 to first-time homebuyers, which sounded fantastic. It was really complicated. I had to sit through 2 or 3 hours of training, and there was a lot of back and forth, and I had to get certified. Um, and after that, all the money was gone within like 6 weeks. I didn't get a single client into it. So for those grant situations that sound too good to be true,
Yeah.
I wouldn't rely on it. I would just say we're going to try to get it for you. If it is available when you have an offer accepted, but don't count on it in your numbers.
Yeah.
I think, Tracy, you can count on the down payment assistance numbers as long as you've been through a pre-approval process.
Right. So talk about so in Massachusetts, basically most of
So
that comes through mass housing, correct?
Right. So the most common down payment assistance programs are through mass housing in Massachusetts. And let me start with the first level of complication is your income. So, as everyone knows with mortgages, you need to make enough income to qualify for the loan. Now, with mass housing, on top of that, you've got to make enough. You can't make too much. They have what's called an income limit. And
Yeah.
I call this is the approval box. You have to fit inside of the box. You have to make enough, but not too much.
Yeah.
And then with some of the down payment assistance, they also have limits on the purchase price. So there are a lot of things to check. And in exchange for going through that, if you qualify a first-time home buyer, et cetera, and in some cases you're limited to where you can buy a home to what's called a gateway city, like Boston, Worcester, New Bedford.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to get between 25 and $30,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance. They're not grants. They're actually second mortgages. You do have to pay them back someday. So the best down payment assistance programs, they'll give you 30,000 and you have no payments. They just defer the payments until you sell the house or refinance the house.
Mm.
And if you refinance the house, they won't let you keep the down payment assistance loan. So
Mm.
typically, what clients will do is that they'll build up equity, like Tracy's talked about, and then you can do a cash out refinance to wipe out the down payment assistance.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So there are a lot more details, but that's the high
Yeah.
concept.
I mean, my best advice would be if you need it or you desire it, is to start a conversation with Kevin and, you know, find out what program you may fit for. Because again, it's this little box you got to fit in. And to me, a lot of times I've had buyers want to seek that find out that they make too much and their response is I wouldn't want to even be trying to afford that house if my income was in that box, which is very true. I mean, it's it's kind of they're pushing you to your limits of what you feel like you probably are comfortable with on a monthly payment. And if it's super comfortable, you probably make too much. So it's but some people want it and some people need it, and it is a gateway towards home ownership if you do not have that money saved up for down payment. And but you just have to be aware that and a lot of times these monies will dry up at certain points in the year, correct, Kevin?
Yes, toward the end of the
So
fiscal year,
I
it'll go
definitely
away.
towards, I mean, and from what I understand, it's been dried up, but it's coming back available in what, April or May? Some,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So they can't guarantee how long those are even available. How do you lock it in with a pre-approval?
Yeah, so we typically collect, it's 3 years of income documentation we collect up front. And we can actually submit it to Mass Housing for them to take a look at it. But you can't lock it in until you have an agreement, a purchase and sale agreement in place.
Right. So that's where it comes into play that, if you're just going to go out there and bid as high as possible to get a property just so you can use it, or are you, are
Yeah,
you,
so in that situation, if you're worried about the funds drying up, then the way I do it is just stay in close touch with me, and we have contacts at Mass Housing,
hmm.
and I can say, look, I've got clients who want to buy March, April, May. When are the funds coming back? And then, when do you anticipate that they might run out again? And so I just proactively manage it that way.
Last question I had on that, do they have to take a home buyer course in order to
Yes,
get, yes,
yes,
through mass housing?
yes. Through that one, you have to take it through Mass Housing. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, next, how to house hack your into a home with a zero net monthly cost to you. A lot of buyers don't look at this opportunity. I think it's an amazing opportunity. I wish somebody had put it on my lap when I was fresh out of college, because quite honestly, I lived in a three family with my buddies for 2 years after college. 2 years. I could have bought one of those three families on that street for probably at the time, probably 100. I'm aging myself now. This is back in 1997, 98, 99. I lived in a multifamily with my buddies, and I thought it was pretty cheap because I was making 40 grand a year and I was paying $600 a month for my portion of the rent. But I wish I had had this opportunity put in front of me where someone had showed me how to basically buy a home with even FHA, 3.5% down, and gotten into a home. And even if I didn't have the closing costs, don't like just for anyone that's buying a house, we can structure seller to pay closing costs. So you have to have a little bit more than 3.5% down in your bank account, but you don't have to be worried about 2 to 3% in closing costs too if we structure it into a deal. But getting back to this scenario, if I had bought in that multifamily and kept it my entire life and lived in it for 3 years and rented the other apartments to other kids that were renting off campus, I would have had a property that was a zero cost to me. 600 was pretty cheap then, but zero is even better. But zero would have also set me up to own that property long term as a cash flow property that's probably worth $500,000 today. So consider this an option. Instead of stretching yourself to the absolute thinnest margins with a single family, because single families have gotten expensive in Massachusetts, is buy that multifamily. We will run the numbers for you. I can find you probably hundreds of properties right now that this will work on, that the cash flow is enough where your cost is going to be negligible, if not zero. And this is an actual scenario. So this is, and when we go backwards to the slide about keeping your eye on the market, this opportunity came to me through someone I know that's selling an off MLS multifamily. They completely renovated two of the units. So you don't have to live in a junker. This is completely renovated. Two out of the three units are completely renovated. The other one was renovated like 5 years ago. So in this scenario, this property, 550 with 3.5% down, the monthly mortgage with taxes and insurance, all in costs around $3,900 a month. The rent from the two other units that you don't live in are equal to $3,900 right now. So that net cost to you on that property would be zero. Now you want to buy, I know your goal was a single family. I think it's a great goal. But if you house hack for a couple years and save what you were going to pay for, let's say you were willing to pay $3,000 for a single family per month, you take that $36,000, double it, $72,000 in 2 years. Now, if you really want to live in that single family, you take that down payment money that you've now saved up and you go out and buy a single family. If you're willing to do a little bit more house hacking, you could actually buy another multi at that point in time and build your cash flow, build your future equity, and have a couple properties. And here's what I say: a lot of people don't love being landlords, but if you own really nice apartments and you spend the time to really go through applicants carefully and get the right people in, it can be a great opportunity for you to not have a ton of hassles, but have income that over, you keep those for 30 years. I don't know what a 550 property will be worth in 30 years, but my guess is at least $1 million. And that's money that you wouldn't have otherwise. And maybe you would have equity in your single family, but I think this is a great opportunity that not a lot of people look at. What's your thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, and I have several clients who started out with one multi, and the ones who like doing it, they like kind of finding the renters and managing them, and they're okay with, maintenance. They go on to buy three, four, five, six, and I have one guy who owns 17 now.
Wow.
And a couple of these people go on to quit their day jobs. This becomes their job.
Yeah,
So, but doing the first one, that's when you find out, is this something I want to do? And am I good at it? And then you might go on to buy several more.
totally. Awesome. All right. How to get your offer accepted once you find the perfect home. Here's one thing I look at. I think that offer strategy is probably the most overlooked aspect of buying a home. And I say this because we talk to a lot of consumers who come to us that are frustrated, uh, that are frustrated with they've been looking for a year, they've made offers, not gotten them accepted, they don't know why, or they just get some marginal information on why their offer wasn't accepted, and they just keep going on thinking it's just the market and I just have to deal with it. I don't buy that. I think that if you're making the right offers, it shouldn't take that long because that agent that you're working with is really digging deep to find out what do we need to do to compete and what do we need to do to win. Now, you may tell your agent, no, I can't do that, but your agent should be giving you an idea what is it going to take to win this property? And they should have enough experience and enough information to figure out what they need to do to compete. And here's a scenario I see all the time, even as a listing agent. I'll have an open house on Sunday, and all of a sudden I'll get offers on Monday and Tuesday. No one called me, asked me questions about the seller situation. Nobody texted me. Nobody even called me to tell me an offer was on the way. What if that offer was in the spam folder? Like, this is all stuff that should be common sense, but it's just not. And so, like, we look at the offer process very seriously. We want to keep the offer as clean and as understandable as possible. I still get and see offers even today that are hand scratched and I can barely read them. I also like to put a summary with my offers. Here's the offer, here's the high level details. So that, or here's the most important aspects of the offer. Yeah, my offer is 3 pages and it's attached, but let's make it easy on the reader, and so that there's nothing left to interpretation. For instance, if you're using an escalation clause, if they may see the offer on the first page and not even read to the second page or the addendum that's attached to see that there's an escalation clause. So I want to make sure in the summary that I'm summarizing this is an offer starting at with an escalation two. And I'm going to talk a minute about escalation clauses, but make them as clear as possible, make them as clean as possible. Honestly, 8 years ago, my addendum with additional language was probably 2 pages long. I try to wean that down to as little as possible. If I can fit everything into the second page of the offer form, which is a few different lines at the very end, additional provisions, I want to fit it there. If I can't, then I will use an addendum, but I want that addendum to be as short as possible. Cleaner, simpler, better. It just is so true when you're submitting offers. It has to look professional. And if at all possible, you or your agent, if you're, I mean, I guess if you're going out alone, you could be in contact with the seller directly or the listing agent directly. However, if you're working with us your buyer's agent, we're calling the listing agent. We're also, if you, even if you said, "Hey, I just went to an open house and I like this property," we're trying to run out and get to that open house before it ends because the meeting and the shaking of the hand of that listing agent and showing them that you've seen the property too, and that you're engaging with your buyer fully and understand the property fully is important. Because for me, if I'm a listing agent on the other side and I know the buyer and the agent have both seen the property, it gives me a little bit more comfort level that this is going to go through towards closing because no one wants a deal falling apart. So if the agents had an opportunity to see it and see if there's things that they want to note to the buyer, because let's face it, buyers see all the pretty things. Agents hope to see all the things that are wrong with it. So, when one has seen it and one hasn't, to me, there's a little bit of a disconnect. So, seeing it, having a conversation with the listing agent, building rapport, asking what the seller's needs and wants are. If you can structure your offer to meet the seller's needs, let's say you know, no one else asked the question, but your agent asked the listing agent, when ideally would the seller really like to close? And the seller tells you 3 months because they need time to get their stuff out and they need to find time to find another property. Everyone else wants to close in 30 days, but you offer a closing that's 90 days out, or you indicate in your offer that you're flexible on closing date out for, let's say, 6 months. If you just have to give first notice at your apartment and you have flexibility, offer flexibility. That might be what wins you the deal. So getting as involved in the process as possible to make sure that your offer is going to be looked at in the best light by the other side is super important. Escalation clauses. I use these a lot. It kind of gets you when there's a small portion of agents out there that don't like to see them, but a majority of agents, they're just going to submit it to the offer as it looks, and they're not going to poo-poo your escalation clause. What an escalation clause is basically you want to start an offer at a certain price. I always recommend, like you'll see some escalation clauses. Let's say the property is listed for 400,000. The agent will start an escalation at 350,000 and go up to 25 or $30,000 above list price. I don't like that because that's like saying, oh, if no one else offers, then I want to get a deal on it. And if everyone is offering on it, then I'm willing to go above list price. I don't, to me, that could lose you opportunities. If you think the list price is fair, start your escalation at the list price. And the language will basically say, I'm willing to increase my offer up by a certain number over your highest offer with a max offer price of blank. Now, there's some further strategy that we'll talk about when we're in this scenario. One that, for instance, is a lot of people will use $1,000 more than the next highest offer up to blank. I prefer to use like $5,000 more than the next highest offer up to blank. And the reason I do that is if it's only $1,000, the seller might say, well, that's kind of unfair to the other buyer. They just came in with a great offer, and you're just telling me, you're basically coming in and saying, tell me your highest offer and I'll beat it by $1,000. It's kind of looked at sometimes like, well, that's kind of shitty. But if you offer 5,000 or even 10,000 over the next highest offer, that's some serious money on the table that the seller is probably not going to want to overlook. So strategy behind escalation clause is as important as the escalation clause itself. I also try to psychologically think about what another buyer might offer and what my max might be. So if a buyer tells me my max is 400, I might say back, but if they came back to you and said 405, would you do it? Then that might change how we put in the escalation clause because we could do any number. It could be instead of 425, we could do an escalation clause to a max of 427 or 428 or 429. So thinking about how you do that escalation clause is just as important as the escalation clause itself. There's some strategy behind it, but it does work in many cases, and it gets you at least some information. Even if it doesn't work, or you get outbid, it kind of gives you more indication than just submitting a regular offer on how badly did we lose it and what were the reasons that we lost it. All right. The right pre-approval and showing your max. Show your max. And in markets in the past, and there's still some agents that are living by this, which I disagree with, is submitting offers with a pre-approval to match exactly what you're offering. The reasoning that used to be behind that was don't show the seller your hand. Like, why would you show the seller how much you can be a pre-approval? They're going to just try to drive you up. You got to throw that out the window at this point because when sellers are looking at multiple offers, it's going to come down to who's the strongest. And we had a situation in this fall, early fall, where the buyer came to us after being frustrated on losing many offers. And the last offer they had lost to was a cash offer, and they lost it by $15,000. And I started asking questions about the pre-approval. What did your pre-approval look like? Well, we offered 600 and we made the pre-approval to 600. I'm like, how much are you pre-approved for? And he said, oh, probably I could get up to 900. I'm like, then you should have shown the 900 because if a seller's looking at cash offer here, $15,000 less, your offer here, $15,000 more, but you're a slam dunk buyer because you could get approved to 900. Now the seller might be willing to take that risk and say, I'm going to take the risk on getting the extra 15 grand because this guy's approved for 900. It's a slam dunk for him to get this mortgage. So think about those things when you're showing your pre-approval letter. Also, what is in that pre-approval has never been more important. When there's multiple offers in hand, every agent is going to look closely at what that pre-approval says and who it's with. There's nothing wrong with the huge conglomerate online mortgage companies. However, when there's I mean, they do get the job done. I've they may not take it too hard as much as a guy like Kevin sitting here in Massachusetts is going to, and that's just my opinion, but it's my opinion and I'm going to share it. However, when it comes to accepting offers, agents want to see someone that they might have run into before, might have done a deal with before, someone that's local that they know is just going to really try to do everything possible to get this loan closed. So, but beyond that, Kevin, can you take a second just to kind of give your strategy on winning offers with the pre-approval, what it should say, and how the underwriting process even up front can help on a pre-approval letter?
Sure. So I, like you, I view the pre-approval letter as an extension of your strategy to get the offer accepted. So I don't think a lot of borrowers know this, but I'm allowed to change and add things to my pre-approval letter. So in Tracy's case, he likes to show the maximum, so I show the maximum. Uh, um, Other things I can add are the specific address of the property that you're making an offer on, which in some cases that'll make a listing agent feel better. It'll make them feel like, we've taken a customized and real deep dive on this specific property and looked at the numbers that way. That can be important. And there are other things that I can add to that pre-approval to make it stronger. Typically, we only show three things: the price that you're approved for, the down payment percentage, and whether or not you need to sell something before you buy something. So, and again, there are lots of things that I can add that are allowed, and I'm going to defer to you, the borrower, and Tracy, to you for overall strategy.
Yeah.
As far as having me call the listing agent, I think that's really important because not only does it allow me to add color to the pre-approval or find out if there are any objections and I can counter those objections, but I've had a couple situations where listing agents reveal things to me that they're not revealing to anyone else. I had a situation once where they told me how many other offers there were and where everyone stood on their offer prices. And again, the listing agent told me, I don't know why, but again, I picked up the phone and called, the buyer's agent, or whoever was in Tracy's chair at the time to share it. So yeah, again, the pre-approval piece of this can be very strategic too.
Yeah, 100%. Everything's strategic in a market like this for sure. And I'm glad you said it, but the date on the pre-approval matters. If it's 3 months ago, you got to get it updated. Even if it was a month ago, I'd want Kevin to put a more recent date on it. Because, again, they're looking at it like, I don't want this deal to fall apart. How can I be sure that if we accept offer A, which is basically equal to offer B, how do I decipher which one is the more likely one to close? Because that's what it comes down to a lot, not offer price. A lot of times it's, will this close? And especially in scenarios where there might be multiple sales wrapped into one, where the offer that you're making is on a home and they need to buy another home and they're under agreement on that, and then that seller is buying a home. There's many times where multiple deals are wrapped into one, and if one of those cards fall, the entire thing falls. So it's super important for them to go with the deal that they know is going to close. So super important. Pre-approval, super important. Um, all right. So let's talk about how to look like a cash buyer when presenting offers. Now, obviously, cash with proof of funds is still clearly different, but I don't know if I could even count on as high as the amount of people that have come to me and said, well, I've got cash and cash is king and cash is always going to win. Well, as long as you're not necessarily, it's certainly not going to automatically get you even a 5% discount in this market. So cash isn't always king. So how you make your offer look as close to cash as possible is important, because close to cash versus cash and $5,000, I bet a lot of sellers would pick that extra $5,000 with your offer, as long as your offer looks fairly solid and fairly equal to what they would consider cash. So here's my thoughts on that. Show your highest buying power. We talked about that one already. Getting through underwriting. A lot of buyers will just submit that, you know, enough information for the pre-approval. They won't send their lender all their income docs and all their tax documents, and they won't go through the full process up front. I think it's super important. You want to make sure you do that with your lender, so that you're basically pending property at that point. You're underwritten pending property. And I think, and then highlight that on your pre-approval letter, and highlight that when the lender talks to that person. Like, look, they're through the system. We just need the property. It's going to make it look even better. Consider offering appraisal gap coverage. If you've got a little bit of money in your pocket, this can be a strategy. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it's kind of a little bit more of a complex strategy. But let's say in a bidding war, you have a property that's listed for 400,000, and all the bids are up to 450,000. And let's say there's three offers that are close to or at 450,000. Like, it was a bidding war. There's 50,000 over list price. The listing agent's looking at the offers saying, all right, well, what happens if it doesn't appraise for that high? So they either have to take that risk if all the offers are equal, or if there's a buyer in there that says, you know what, I'm willing to offer a gap coverage, meaning as long as it appraises for this price or better, then I'll close. It can be a winning strategy. How that would work, let's say you plan on putting 5% down, but through family members, through 401k, you could pull another $25,000 into the deal if you absolutely had to. You're pretty confident it's going to appraise, but you want to get a winning strategy. You put in there the strategy, let's say, as long as it appraises for 425 or better, we'll close on at 450 sale price. So then, depending on where the appraisal comes in, you bring in that extra down payment money to the table, because the lender's only going to loan on the lower of the two, the sale price or the appraised value. Whatever percentage you were putting down, it's the percentage of the sale price or the appraisal, whichever is lower. So think about that, because that can be a winning strategy. It's not for everyone or everything or every sale. I don't love using them, but if we're in a really tough battle for a certain type of property in certain towns, then we may have to do that. So that's a strategy that could be used. Appraisal waivers for high down payment buyers. So if you're putting, Kevin, what, at least 20% down, or is it typically a 25?
At least 20,
At
typically,
least
yeah.
20% down. Before we make offers, you can submit that property to see if it would get in a waiver, correct?
Yes.
So you're putting 20% down or more, and you're going to make an offer. We will run it through the lender's desk and say, hey, can you run this property, see if it'll get an appraisal waiver? Because all the lending companies have their automated value systems. They just do, just like we do. We can check a bunch of different valuation systems. And as long as the value is there and you're putting enough down, then their security position is in place and they will waive the appraiser. That's an important one. If you can do it and you're putting down a good amount of down payment money, it's a great strategy. You get that appraisal waiver, then nobody on the listing side, the seller, the listing agent, nobody has to worry about the appraisal at that point. So that's another one. Make your contingency look better. Just like the strategy we talked about with appraisal gap coverage. Let's say you had enough money, you could scrape together, pull some money from a 401k to do a 10% down loan. So you could finance 90%, but you really want to finance 90, let's say 3.5% down loan. You're going for the 3.5% FHA loan because you want to do some work to the property. However, push comes to shove, you could put 10% down, make your contingency less. So put in your contingency for a 10% down loan instead of an FHA 96.5% loan. That's going to look better when you're comparing it to other offers. In the end, if you can get that FHA loan, you can still go with the FHA loan. You're not committing to the loan. You're saying, this is my contingency. So change up the contingency to make your offer look better, but go with the loan you want to if you are able to get it. You just have to know that if you can't get it, that you have to put 10% down. And what is the property condition? Because if it's an FHA loan, there's certain conditions that have to come into play on the property. It can't be broken windows, peeling paint, safety hazards, broken glass, things like that they look for in an FHA appraisal. If it's got those things, then maybe that's not a good strategy. But if it's a pretty clean property and you think it's good for FHA and your agent thinks it's good for FHA, then put the contingent in there for a 10% down loan, but then take the FHA loan if you can get it. And as long as you close your contingency, you're protected by your contingency, but you're closing with the loan you want to. That's one strategy. Another strategy is on inspections. Thankfully, in recent months, we're starting to see a waning of the waivers of inspections, but in a highly competitive situation, buyers are still waiving home inspections. I can't stand that because I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for the seller and for the buyer, but it's been happening and it can continue to happen here in this market. And it may this spring if things really heat up in the spring again. So instead of just having a blanket inspection contingency, I'll add into our addendum that our inspection will be only to confirm there's no major structural, electrical, plumbing issues, etc., with the property. Nothing crazy wrong with the property. Oh, it's over a certain value, whether it's 5,000, 10,000. It just takes out some of the, okay, I hope this buyer doesn't back out on nitpicky reasons because there's 100 different maintenance items in the property. And I have a long conversation with every buyer going in on what to expect at home inspections because half of home inspections are a maintenance list that you could go in a new construction home and a home inspector could find 100 things wrong with it that you have to add caulking here. This is missing a screw. Like there's no property that's not susceptible to a long inspection report. It's just that's what they do. They're there to find everything and anything that could use maintenance now or in the future on a property, and they'll put it in the report. So, but making your contingency look better is important. So those are just some of the things that go into making an offer look like a cash sale. Here's one thing that a really good real estate agent and good real estate team can help you in the buying process is looking at homes and identifying potential problems up front. You always want to be looking for the hidden stories. I know it's exciting to go look at pretty homes and see all the possibilities, but you have to have a different set of glasses you bring to be looking for the problems also. But if you're not, then at least your real estate agent should be. And these are the things that I do when I'm going up to the property. The first thing I'm looking at is what does the roof look like? Are there curling shingles? At this time of year, even though we can't see the shingles, is there a lot of ice at the soffits, at the lower end of the roof, which could indicate that there's heat loss, is creating ice damming, which may mean that when you get inside, there's some water lines in the ceiling where the water is getting under the shingles, going through the structure and into your home. So, but other than in the winter, I'm looking for, are there gutters on the home? And gutters are ideal, but gutters are not ideal if they're all going to one spot in a corner of the house and ending at the corner house straight down and not being taken away from the house with a gutter taking it away from the house, because that's worse. You'd be better off to have no gutters and have the rain just coming down close to the foundation across the entire thing than a mountain of water coming down at one end. Or you have gutters that are full of stuff and they're not even working. I'm looking for, does the land slope away from the house? Inside, I'm looking for, it looks like a chalk stock market graph. Do you see on the walls in the basement a stock market graph? It looks like a white line across your foundation walls. That's called the efflorescence line. That's basically indicating you where the water level is on the outside of the foundation. Because the chalking happens wherever that water line is, it shows on the inside without you even having to dig a hole. So if it's really high in one corner, there's probably water sitting in that corner from coming off the roof. Not a good situation. Are you seeing any water come into the basement through uh, either seep holes or sometimes the concrete ties where they had the forms? They look like little metal pieces sticking on the wall. They rust out, that metal rusts away, and then you've got water seeping in through them. Um, Not that these aren't things that have to be deal killers, but you want to know up front, like, what are you getting into? I hate having a buyer spend money on a home inspection and find it's something that we could have seen and avoided in the first place. No one wants to waste $600 on a home inspection on something that a good agent could have seen while you're looking at the property. So that's why it's important to look for these things up front to save you the money and make sure that you don't get into a total disaster. Try to open up all the windows and doors. If all the windows are stuck in the house, then you got a problem on your hand. Um, is it two prong or three prong outlets? If there's only two holes in those outlets, you've got old wiring that's probably going to need to replace. There's no ground wire in those. I always look to see what the number of amps are in the circuit breaker. At the very top, you'll typically see one breaker in the middle at the top. On the very end of that little breaker, it'll have a number 100 or 200. If it's fuses, you got a worse problem on your hands, and that's something you just shouldn't live with. Fuses should never be in any house at this point in our existence as homeowners. But if it's circuit breakers, it's 100 amp or 200 amp. If you've got a large house over, let's say, over 1,800 square feet, and it's only 100 amp, you may be overloading your circuits a little bit, and you may have things trip. So because typically anything over, in my mind, anything over 1,700 square feet should probably have a 200 amp service. So it might mean uploading. You might be able to live with it if you don't run a lot of appliances at once. But if you run a home office and you run a bunch of electronics, you may, want to upgrade that to 200 amp at some point. So we're looking at for everything. Look up behind the furniture, look under the rugs. I've been in a house before where you look behind the couch and there's mold on the walls. Literally, I've been pulled out a couch and there was mold on the walls, and they just wiped down all the walls around the couch. They never moved the couch to wipe that down either. So there was a hidden water problem somewhere in that house. I've also pulled up a rug before to find out there wasn't hardwoods underneath the rugs. In early 1900 homes, a lot of times where they had the center area rug, they would use just pine board, and then they would use hardwood wood around the perimeter and leave the middle of it unfinished with pine unfinished wood underneath the rugs. So these are all the things you want to look for. We help you with that. We make sure that you, if at all possible, aren't wasting your money through a home inspection. And if for some odd reason it's a situation where you have to waive inspection, the right team is even more important because we can look and help you see what might be a problem down the road. All right. this is the end. We're getting a little over on time here, so I don't want to end this soon. I don't want to take up too much of people's time. But the five biggest buyer traps that I see out there and how you can avoid them. Number one is not running the monthly payment on the home prior to making an offer. I, it's just a mistake. Like, and here's why, because every property has a different set of taxes, property taxes, and the insurance may be different, and you may not have run the exact offer amount you're running on that. You might have some idea from your lender, or you should have an idea on what your monthly payment's going to be, but get run it by Kevin, run it by your lender, and just make sure you know what the monthly payment is going to be going in. And ask your agent to check and see what this current tax assessment is and what the taxes per month are per year right now, because that doesn't mean it's going to be the same after you close. I've seen a lot of scenarios where, let's say, the house has been owned for a long time and it hasn't been reassessed by the town in a good number of years, 5 to 10 years, and the assessment value is 400 and it's being sold at 500,000. If you run your payments on 400 on the taxes on 400,000 versus 500,000, that can change things quite a bit. That can change it to the point where you're like, I don't know, if I can afford this anymore. So don't make that mistake. And it's especially true with new construction because they're estimating the taxes a lot of times. So they're putting in the listing with an estimated taxes and they don't want to show that being too high. So they're going to use a number that's arbitrarily low. So understanding what the monthly cost is going to be before you make an offer, super important. Second one, not doing a home inspection. If at all possible, we want you to have a home inspection. And even if we have to talk the listing agent into it and say, look, this is a good idea for your seller and for my buyer, because it's just going to protect your seller from future lawsuit if they've had a good home inspection. Not that my buyer wants to sue you, but these are the situations that people get into when they say, well, this we could have known this through a home inspection and now we didn't, so we want to sue for whatever repair is necessary. It protects everyone. We want you to have that. That's not doing one is extremely dangerous, and you just need to know that up front. Not having the right team in place. It's all about having the right team. We've literally had buyers that were working with other people for a year, 2 years, got nowhere, came to the right team, came to us, and were closed within a couple months. Like literally, it can be the difference. Why? We take this very seriously. Me and my team members, Lisa, Audra, Matt, Mark, all the team members that work with me, all the people that work with Kevin. It's we take this very seriously. It's a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job. It's a life. You have to love this life. You have to learn everything you can about it. You need the experience. If you're working with an agent that's part-time, if you're working with an agent that's not committed to working with the right team leader and the right lenders, then you could just be out there wandering around as a buyer thinking you have the right team and not really have the right team and never achieve your goals. So there's never been a more important time than now to have the right team in place. Number four, not having the right pre-approval letter. You got to have a really good pre-approval letter. It's got to look strong. It's got to have a lender behind it that can talk and will help you sell your offer. And number five, waiting until you're 100% ready to engage in the process. It's a big mistake. Like as soon as you say to yourself, I really want to buy a home. I think it's time for us to buy a home. Start talking to a lender, start talking to a real estate agent, create your team and work with that team until you reach your goals. Because there's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of complexities. There's always things that are changing in our industry, and you just need to be prepared for it. You need to be planning for it. Even from a standpoint, I know, Kevin, you could probably back this up. People fear talking to lenders, probably more so than real estate agents. And it's probably because it is pretty scary to get the pre-approval. And they're just worried that, well, I'm just very early in the process. And I know if I talk to a lender, they're going to try to get me to fill out a pre-approval letter. And I'm not ready for that. But talking to a lender early on is extremely important because they can give you strategies just basic strategies like, hey, tell me what your income is, tell me what your where your credit is. I can give you a guideline on how to improve your credit. I can give you some ways of saving up. I can give you scenarios to tell you what it might look like when you're ready to buy. There's all things like what else, Kevin, do you do with someone when you're able to engage them very early in the process?
Yeah, so along the lines of credit, I often have people who say, Kevin, I've got $75,000 saved up and I want to buy a house. I want to, put some money down, but my credit's not where it should be. So what should I do? And in some cases, it's do nothing. Turns out the credit score is fine, and having a larger down payment is important. There are other clients at the other end of the spectrum where I say, take half your money and pay off these three credit cards because we can model this. Your credit score is likely to go up 50 points, and that'll help you qualify for a much larger mortgage. It varies from person to person. I have to run a lot of numbers to get that answer. The
Right.
other thing outside of credit, I just wanted to jump over to income and employment. I often get clients saying, I have this great job, base salary, but I'm thinking about becoming self-employed before I buy a house. And that is one of a handful of things that can actually prevent you from being able to get a mortgage right away. Because when you suddenly become self-employed, you typically need at least one, if not 2 years of track record before we can use that income to qualify you. So again, these are all conversations we have to have well in advance.
Yeah, it's totally true. And it's not always like it doesn't they don't always go together, the things that you think you should do and the things that actually you should do to make yourself be put in a better position. Like it's really it's a complex scenario and it's absolutely 100% different with every single person.
Yep.
It's like if you're thinking about taking another job, talk to your lender about it. If you're thinking about getting a new car, talk to your lender about it. I've seen people say, "I just paid off all my stuff," and the lender say, "That just killed you. Why'd you do that?" Like if you
Yeah.
like, it's counterintuitive sometimes, but you got to know the game, and the only way you'll know the game is talking to the right professionals that understand it and can run the scenarios and say, I know you're saving up great, but pay this down and your score will boost and it'll get you in another category. I've had people come in and say, I'm still working on my credit. I'm at 700. I know I need to get it like 750 before I buy. And they just, I don't know where they got that information, but that's what they thought. So it's always a good idea. It's the same thing. Like I don't, you know, at the end of the day, there's a ton of resources out there, and we're just another resource for you to bounce questions off and not push you to do something you want to do. Just be there for you as a resource for that moment in time when you are ready to get a loan, get a refinance, buy a home, sell a home. For us, it's really about a long-term relationship and being there for you when you go through these moments in your life when you need a real estate agent or you need a lender and to, really provide a high quality of service and a high quality of professionalism so that we're giving you good advice, advice you can count on. And I always pride myself on helping people achieve the longer term goal. The closing's nice, but I like it even more when I can see people building actual wealth through the ownership of real property. And, one of my favorite clients is a couple teachers who retired. These two guys retired. They were best friends. They didn't love their income from their retirement and they decided they wanted to do some investing. In the course of 10 years, they've built over 1.5 million of equity in multifamily properties just by, buying one every a couple years, using the cash flow to save even more. They don't take anything out of it. They'll probably start too soon, but they've just built a really nice nest egg for their families through their retirement and buying multifamily properties. So, and the same thing happens with single families. So that's all we have. So now from here on in, it's all up to you. You can continue to just go along your path of you are now and taking those baby steps. But I really recommend you engage in the right team, and the right team might be us. If you like this webinar and you think we could be of benefit to you, then Kevin and I are here for you, and my team members are here for you. So a lot of you were invited by some of my team members, whether it's Lisa, Audra, Mark, Matt, Dan, some of my other team members. You were invited to this through them. And if they're on my team, I've picked them very carefully to work on my team, and they engage with me on a daily basis, and I engage with them in helping our clients get absolutely everything they want in life through the real estate that they own. And we take it very seriously. I jump in all the time with my team members to help them strategize over how to win offers. You're getting a team. You're getting me, you're getting Kevin, you're getting the team member that's taking you out to see houses. You're getting us all, and you're getting a team that's never going to quit until you get what you want. So just keep that in mind. If you want to take the next step, when you get the thank you from me or Kevin or any of our team members, or if you were invited through one of them, book a call with them. Book a call with us. Book a call with Kevin. My information's down here below, and so is Kevin's. We'd be happy to help you out. We'd be happy to just even answer a simple question. You know, doesn't mean we're going to be asking you to commit to us long term. It's a when we get into a relationship with a client and we want to service them for life, it's a trust building opportunity for us to just start having the conversations and show you that we can be a great fit for you and help you reach your goals without a lot of pressure and without having to, make you sign on the dotted line before we'll have a conversation with you. We want to build your trust by giving you good information, giving you good value, and hopefully you got a lot of value out of this webinar. And we really look forward to helping you reach your goals. I know it seems tough. 2025 doesn't seem much different than 2024 so far as the challenges that we faced in the real estate market with lack of inventory and bidding wars and high interest rates. However, every client that we've closed in 2024 is in a good position. We will never put people in a bad position. All of them were good positions, and all of them are building equity, paying down their mortgage, getting the tax benefits, and owning something that is theirs, that they can replace a door, add a deck, paint, do whatever they want to, instead of having to rely on whether someone else wants to do that for them. So, Kevin, you have any closing thoughts?
I think you covered it all.
Awesome. This was great. I am recording it. We will send out the recording to anybody that requested a copy of it. And we'll see you on the next one, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.